by a decline, but that I think is what we're more interested in. And I have the book to prove it. And, there's the reference to our Renaissance of languages. And there's some symbolism maybe in that next week, I'm not unusually going to Brussels, but I'm going to Brussels with one of our ministers from the other part of what used to be the department, as Mike called it, Jim Knight, the schools minister, who's actually going to a meeting in Brussels on multilingualism. I think this is probably a first, both for there to be such a meeting and for it to be a ministerial meeting. And Jim is very happy to go, and I'm very happy, of course, that he's going, because we have a very good story to tell. And Mike has already indicated, I think, that there are people out there who are actually jealous about what we're doing in this country about languages, and that's quite a nice place to be. The Minister already referred to one of the key elements of what we are doing, what has been achieved, and what Ron very wisely in his report about the problems post-14 made a focal point, which is what we do pre-11, and that is our primary entitlement, which is actually moving beyond an entitlement to become a statutory part of the curriculum. I actually had a meeting today with Sir Jim Rose, who's been asked by the department to look at the whole of the new primary curriculum, and I don't think it's telling tales to say that it's not now a question of whether primary languages become part of the curriculum, but it's not even a question of when, it's a question of how, and how it will happen. And already the groundwork has been made, the ground has been laid for that to happen. We are in a situation now, and actually these are old figures, I'm not allowed to quote what I think they really are, but add a few, because these are hard statistics. 70% of schools delivering languages to their pupils, 34% of them to all of their pupils, but most importantly, we are in a situation of massive enthusiasm for languages. That's very interesting, the kind of story to tell, isn't it? It's enthusiasm among the teachers, some of whom have been won over to this and are late converts, but many of whom have leapt on the possibility of teaching languages in primary school, but most of all for the kids. And contrasting that with some of the attitudes that this programme, I think, is set to address, is very heartening for all of us. I want to share two little quotes from kids. Some of you will have heard these, but I like them so much, they keep on repeating them until everybody in the country knows them. One is about the reason why we should teach languages to young people. And it was a 10-year-old boy in West London who told me this. He'd been thinking it through, we were having a conversation, and he said, "I know what it is, sir." He was a very polite boy. It's when you're young, your brains are more empty, so it's easier to learn things, which I think has a lot of truth in it. And another one, which we've our framework for learning in primary schools, was about listening. And it was a child, again, at the older age range, this one said, "Well, I used to think it was very funny when I heard people in the street speaking different languages. Now I listen to see if I can understand them." Now, underlying that thought is a very important thought about why we learn languages, and I think the Minister's already referred to that. Yes, it's about specific opportunities, but it's also about the kind of people that we are and the kind of attitudes that we have. And that's why I think all of us here are so keen and enthusiastic about languages and regard them as so important. And it's not only, in primary schools that that enthusiasm can be found. I was in the Sharp End last week. I was invited by a colleague in Silt to go to Tottenham. I was a bit miffed because it was the day after they beat us at football, which seemed to be the best place to be. But I went to Tottenham nevertheless, to what used to be Tottenham Tech and is now North East London College, and met a large number of young people who were learning languages within their not only vocational childcare, but also economics and other courses, education. And they were all full of enthusiasm and had stories to tell about why languages were so important. So that underlines at both ends what the possibilities are, and as partly as a result of our report, but also because of things that were happening anyway, the possibilities that are opening up in secondary schools, a new curriculum that is being developed, the assessment possibilities that change and develop, and the introduction of new CPD possibilities for teachers. And a very important part of all of this has been the idea of promoting the message and giving the message that languages collaboration between sectors, not only promoting the message, but actually developing our thinking about language and language education. So I'm delighted that we were able to build on the existing proposal that we developed, proposed to EFCI, as a result of the report in order to expand routes into languages across the country. And what ended up as a collaboration between two government departments, although it started off not as that, and that in itself is important. Why is that? Well, it's partly, as Mike said, because 50 universities working together must be a first. But it's also, I think, there are three things that strike me as so important about this particular proposal. Firstly, what I've already mentioned, the need to promote the message to our schools that languages are important. And where better to do that from than the universities and the ambassadors and your young people working in universities to say that we are serious about language. We also need to get business doing it as well, but the universities are a very important part of that, making that case. I know many of you are working with businesses in order to do that. Secondly, it's about cross-phase working. We're not very good at that in education in this country, I guess. We have difficulties now between primary and secondary, which we seek to address. There are issues between secondary and universities and mutual understanding. This project, and I said this last week at the launch, it's bound to succeed because it brings together two things, self-interest and principle. And if you have the self-interest, because you need more students, and the principle that we are really supporting and doing something good for pupils in school, then it will work. And it is desperately important, is it not, that we are inclusive and bring all our children into the opportunities that languages offer. And thirdly, I think, it's about ideas, sharing ideas, thinking about language education, universities understanding learning in schools in order to better what they do in universities. And all of those elements are contained within the different projects that you're organising. So I really wish you every success, and I'm convinced that it will be successful. Last week I was at the launch of one of the partnerships, and there was one of the ambassadors there, who, again, another quotation from a young person, and she described the use of languages for me like a rainbow, and at the end of the rainbow there was something wonderful. Well, hopefully all our pupils will think like that. But I have to finish, because I know that it's not just about regional partnerships, but about translation and interpretation, with one of my favourite books, which I shall share with you. Those of you who have regretted the fact that you've read the whole of Tingo, you know there's number 2 now. And I was looking at this the other day, and there are some things which are opposite. Firstly, to demonstrate how language can be very culturally specific. Now, we spend quite a lot of time in the department thinking about what they do in Finland, because of how well they do in PISA. But if you go to Finland, you might want to know the word polonkusima, excuse my accent, any Finns over here, because this is perhaps not too useful in central London. It's the distance equal to how far a reindeer can travel without a comfort break. However, a lot of what is described in Tingo is about what unites us and makes us very similar. All of you working in higher education and in the public sector will have tried dig-dig. It's appraisal time. This is to praise someone for the quality he lacks in order to encourage him to develop that quality. That's from the Philippines. What I hope we don't do is a Zambian word from Zambia, choco choco, I don't know which language, the tendency to carry on talking after others have stopped. And most opposite for today, a South African Songham word. Incidentally, I came across a primary school where they were learning Songham. Poi poi, a person who talks at length but does not make sense. Which is probably a time for me to shut up and wish you